The Louvre once paid a fortune for a 2,000-year-old golden crown. Experts confirmed it, historians celebrated it. There was just one problem. It had been made in Odessa, just months earlier. Paris, 1896, the end of a century that would be remembered for great discoveries and boundless faith in progress. Here, in the heart of the cultural world, stands a museum whose name sounds like a verdict for anyone who doubts the greatness of art, the Louvre. Its halls are more than just rooms with paintings and statues. They are a stage where the cultural truth of an era is forged. What enters these halls becomes an indisputable fact. What is rejected disappears into oblivion. And then one day, the Louvre announces a discovery that is not simply added to the collection, it is raised to the status of a symbol. A golden tiara, a headpiece straight from ancient pages. Scenes from Homer's Iliad, hammered into gold. An artifact that confirms an ancient legend, a treasure from a Scythian burial mound, buried underground for over 2,000 years. 200,000 gold francs, a sum so large it sparked debate, even within the French Parliament. Newspapers scream headlines, Europe applauds. The tiara takes its place of honor in the Louvre's ancient art gallery. No one asks any questions. Why? Because asking means doubting. And doubting the Louvre, no one dare. But to understand how this could have happened, we must leave the dusty halls of the Parisian Museum and travel south to the Russian Empire, to a city where people are less inclined to elegance and more inclined to practical ingenuity, to Odessa. Odessa, at the end of the 19th century, was a city of contrasts. Luxury mansions stood next to narrow shops. And in this urban mosaic lived people who knew how to see opportunities where others saw only dust. Among them were two figures whose names would later be remembered, the Gochman brothers. Shepsel and Leba, merchants of the Third Guild, owners of a colonial goods store on Kersenskaya Street, 17. Tea, coffee, tobacco, everyday items of trade, but in their eyes lived another dream. But it is here that an idea is born, one that would later embarrass the entire Louvre. Shepsel Gochman was a man of action. He saw peasants finding old coins and pieces of pottery in the fields. He saw artifacts emerging from the ground, objects that were thousands of years old. He understood, real wealth wasn't in bags of sugar, it was beneath the feet of those who had built these lands long before them. Soon the brothers moved closer to the source of these discoveries, Ochakov, a small town on the estuary. And nearby, a place the locals called the 100 Graves. For scholars, it was Olbia, an ancient Greek colony where every layer of soil held an entire era. There, fragments of the past came to light, pieces that became currency for merchants. But demand outpaced supply, antiquarians and collectors demanded rarities, and simple peasants found less and less. And then Shepsel made a decision that changed everything. He would stop waiting. He would create what people were willing to pay for. They didn't just make forgeries, they crafted something more dangerous. They manufactured history. In a basement on Repnina Street, a workshop opened, not for spoons, but for legends. Old marble slabs were recut, ancient inscriptions were erased, and new ones carved in their place. The texts were commissioned from experts in ancient Greek. Excuses were prepared for any questions. Even the ancients made mistakes. But marble was just the beginning. To shake the world, they needed something that would make headlines. They needed gold. They needed a crown. In 1822, a marble slab was found in Olbia, describing how a local resident paid the Scythian King Saitaphernes 900 gold coins to spare the city. But the lower part of the slab was missing. Gochman skillfully forged the missing fragment, adding that along with the 900 coins, the Scythian king had also been presented with a golden crown. The legend was complete. And to bring it to life, Shepsel needed a master. His name was Israel Rukomovsky, born in 1860 in Mosier, into a poor Jewish family. His parents dreamed he would become a rabbi. He chose metal. He was self-taught. He never formally studied jewelry making. But his talent was so great that contemporaries called him the Jewish Cellini, after the greatest jeweler of the Renaissance. By the 1890s, he was already living in Odessa, fulfilling orders for chains, rings, and elegant jewelry, but real recognition had not yet come. And then one day, two men came to him. According to his recollection, the order sounded like this: "We need a crown, gold, in the antique style." It's a gift for our friend, an archaeologist. He was a demanding man, so the work must be flawless. Rukomovsky looked at the sketches. He wasn't an archaeologist, he simply knew what beauty was. He took the order for 1,800 rubles. And he had no idea he was creating the most famous forgery in history. For 7 months, Rukomovsky worked on the Tiara. 7 months of studying books on Greek mythology and Scythian art. He did not copy antiquity, he created it from scratch. The way it had to be, for people to believe in it. He ordered a gold plate weighing nearly half a kilogram from an Odessa jeweler. And he began chasing, engraving, filigree. He created scenes from Homer's Iliad. Figures of gods and heroes came to life under his hands. Every detail was perfect. The inscription in Greek, to the great and invincible King Saitaphernes, the council and people of Olbia. Rukomovsky wasn't an archaeologist, he knew Saitaphernes was a name from ancient chronicles. But he didn't know that this exact inscription didn't appear in the texts he studied. He simply worked, creating the history that everyone was so eager to believe in. By the end of 1895, the Tiara was ready. It was more than just jewelry, it was a work of art of the highest level. And Shepsel Gokman understood, this was his ticket to the big leagues. But selling the Tiara in Odessa was impossible. Here, someone would recognize it, they needed a different market. Shepsel sent the Tiara on a journey, first to Vienna, then to London. Interest everywhere, but a sale nowhere. But Shepsel didn't give up. He knew there was one city where they valued sensation more than truth: Paris. The Louvre, the greatest museum in the world. Here worked the finest experts in Europe. They were proud. They were certain of their infallibility. And Shepsel bet on that arrogance. On April 1, 1896, the Louvre announced the acquisition for 200,000 gold francs. The Tiara became a sensation. The French press was ecstatic. The Louvre prepared a lavish book about the Tiara. They checked the style, checked the inscription, checked the history, everything added up. And that's exactly why no one doubted. No one asked questions. Why? Because asking means doubting. And doubting the Louvre, no one dared. Almost no one. German archaeologist Adolf Furtwängler was the first to notice something strange. He noticed stylistic problems in the tiara's design and a complete absence of signs of aging. It was too perfect, too clean for an artifact that had spent 1,000 years underground. He was supported by Russian archaeologists Veselovsky and Ernst Romanovich von Stern, who had already encountered the Gokman brothers' forgeries. They sent their concerns to the Louvre. The Louvre's response was predictable. The French experts dismissed the criticism, calling it envy from German barbarians toward the sophisticated Gauls. The Louvre stubbornly defended its treasure. Admitting a mistake would mean admitting they were not all-knowing, and that was scarier than any forgery. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. 1903, 7 years had passed. An Odessa jeweler named Lifshitz, who had emigrated to France, arrived in Paris. He visited the Louvre, saw the Tiara, and recognized it. He remembered this piece. He had seen it in Rukomovsky's workshop in Odessa. He declared, "This is not an antiquity, it's a forgery made by his colleague." The scandal grew. The Louvre demanded proof. Rukomovsky, hearing about what was happening, came to Paris himself. He appeared before a commission of experts, frightened but determined. "I made it," he said. The experts laughed. They didn't believe him. Until he picked up his tools and did it again, right before their eyes. From memory, he reproduced a fragment of the tiara, the same ornament, the same technique. He named the exact alloy used to create the piece. The experts examined it, compared, studied. 2 months of investigation in the Louvre. No doubt remained. The tiara was a forgery. Created in Odessa, by the hands of a brilliant self-taught jeweler. This was the moment the system broke. A scandal erupted that echoed across Europe. Crowds flooded into the Louvre to see the creation that had fooled France's archaeological elite. The director of French National Museums was forced to resign. The Louvre's reputation was shaken. And what of the heroes? Israel Rukomovsky wasn't just spared punishment, he became famous. The French government paid him a prize for his craftsmanship. He received a gold medal from the Salon of Decorative Arts. He settled in Paris, working for the Rothschild family. His name entered history as the Jewish Cellini. Shepsel Gochman escaped prison by promising to testify and exposing other participants in the scheme. He left the family business and secured a comfortable life for himself. And the Tiara. Today it sits in the Louvre's Hall of Forgeries. It has transformed from the jewel of the ancient collection into one of the most striking exhibits, showing how easily even the most authoritative experts can be deceived. A miniature copy of the Tiara is kept in the British Museum and the Museum of Israel in Tel Aviv. In 1997, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem borrowed the Tiara for an exhibition dedicated to Rukomovsky's work. The Louvre, which for 7 years had considered it its greatest treasure, loaned it to a museum in another country so it could be exhibited as the work of its famous jeweler. In 2014, a memorial plaque was installed in Odessa on the facade of Building No. 6 on Osipova Street. It reads, "Here in 1896, jeweler and engraver Israel Rukomovsky created the world-famous golden tiara of the Scythian King Saitaphernes." For more stories like this, watch our channel.